Good morning, students. And coming to our next topic, taxable event under GST. And first of all, what is meant by a taxable event? Generally, the taxable event is nothing but the activity based on which the tax liability is created. The activity based on which the tax liability is created is nothing but what taxable event. It simply is nothing but this is creating what incidence of the tax, and it triggers the payment of tax liability. It triggers what the payment of tax liability. In case of the previous indirect tax region, like in case of excise duty, the manufacturing of the goods is said to be a taxable event. And in case of service tax, the provision of services said to be a taxable event. In case of VAT or CST, sale of goods means in case of VAT, intrastate sale, and in case of CST, interstate sales are there. And in case of countervailing duty and special countervailing duty, importing of the goods. So in case of entertainment tax, providing the entertainment services, in case of luxury tax, and in case of toll charges, and in every tax there is a taxable event, and based on that activity only the tax liability is created by the government. And later these all taxes are subsumed under the purview of what GST. So coming to the GST, what is the taxable event? The taxable event here is nothing but what supply of goods or services or both. What supply of goods or services or both, except the alcohol meant for human consumption. So, as we discussed, alcohol meant for human consumption is not covered under the purview of the GST. It is completely outside the purview of the GST. So, the supply of goods or services or both in India is said to be a what taxable event. And there we have to discuss what is meant by supply and what is meant by goods and what is meant by services. What is meant by services? Okay. So here, so what is the taxable event in case of GST? Supply of goods or services or both. And first we discuss what is meant by goods. So goods includes so it includes what every kind of movable property is covered under the definition of good, and it also include actionable claims, growing crops, grass, or things attached to or forming part of the land which are agreed to be surveyed before supply or under the contract of the supply, but not include what money and security. So coming to the goods, it includes what all movable property. All movable properties are covered under the definition of good, and it also include actionable claims, growing crops or grass, and things attached to the earth, but can be dismantled before supply. Can be dismantled before supply or before the contract of that supply. But it does not include nothing but what it excludes what money and the securities. It excludes what money and the security. These two are excluded from the definition of goods. So all movable properties are covered under the definition of the good. Means immovable properties are not covered. Like sale of land and the sale of building are not covered under the building. Land and building are not covered under definition of good. And another one is actionable claims. So what is meant by an actionable claims? And actionable claims covers two things. One is a claim to the debt other than secured debt. A claim to a debt other than secured debt. And a right to claim, right to receive the amount on a debt. So, right to receive the amount on a debt. So other than secured debt means any debt which was secured against any mortgage or hypothecation or place of anything or are not covered under what actionable claims. And it also includes some specified actionable claims like lottery tickets, betting, gambling, online money gaming, online money gaming, etc. These are all covered under what specified actionable claims. Specified actionable claim. And claims to a debt other than the secured debt, are covered under the definition of what actionable claims. So actionable claims are also forming part of the definition of the good. And it also includes what growing crops and grass and the things which are attached to the earth but can be dismantled before the supply. It means anything attached to the earth and which can be dismantled, which can be cut before the removal or before the supply of the product to the another part. Before the supply, for example, coming to the growing crops like mango trees are there or any crops you have, and before the supply of the product, and those all are attached to the earth and those are in immovable stage. If you enter into the contract with the supply of those products, at the time of supply those will be cut from the tree and will be delivered, and those are covered under the definition of the good. But it does not include what money and the security. It does not include what money and security. Here money stands for any Indian currency or any foreign currency which is a legal tender, which is or any instrument which is a legal tender as per the RBI, as per the RBI. So but and it means like bills of exchange or even promissory note, bearer checks, and those are also covered under the definition of what money. But money does not include which is having a numismatic value. And that means, for example, old currencies you have. So like previous old currencies which are not a legal tender now. And some persons having an habit of collecting the old coins. That old coins trading is treated as a supply. And the old currency had by the parties is treated as a good in their hands. Okay. So money includes only those instruments which are legally tendered as per the RBI Act, as per the RBI, are only covered under the definition of the money. And securities are nothing but what shares, debentures or bonds or any instrument are covered under the definition of what security. So remember, money and securities are those items which are not covered under both good as well as the services. Not covered under both good as well as the services. Okay, so it includes what every kind of mobile property, actionable claims, growing crops, grass, or anything attached to or forming part of the land, which are agreed to be severed before the supply or under the contract of the supply. But it does not include what money and security. But any transactions in relation to the securities which are involving additional consideration like share broker and stockbrokers and are liable to pay GST. For example, if any, for example, you purchase the share, purchase of the share is not a supply. Purchase of the share is not a supply, but you are purchasing the shares through the stockbroker, and you liable to pay some commission to that party. That commission is said to be about supply, and they need to pay the GST to the government. And the currency is held for some numismatic value is treated as a good. Best example is old currency. Old currency. And remember, in case of money, one more thing is the cryptocurrency. Shall we consider cryptocurrency as a part of the money? The answer is no, because it is not a legal tender as per RBI. It is not accepted as a legal tender as per RBI. That's why it is not covered under the definition of what money. And these are the few points we discussed already in previous class. Alcohol meant for human consumption is not covered, is completely outside the purview of GST. And few products are there which are not yet notified by the central government. That's why those are also covered outside the purview of GST as of now. And those will be covered under GST with effect from the date notified by central government, like petrol, high-speed diesel oil, natural gas, and ATF, aviation, turbine fuel, and those are not covered under the purview of GST. And tobacco products are liable for both excise duty as well as for GST. Opium, Indian hemp, and other narcotic drugs are also liable for both excise duty as well as GST. But here it is a state excise duty, and there it is a central excise duty. And coming to here, actionable claims we discussed. A claim to any debt except secured debt, and a specified actionable claims what lottery tickets and gambling, betting, casino, and online game. Remember, online gaming stands for online money gaming. There is a difference between online gaming and online money gaming. So online gaming, there you pay the amount for playing the game, and your intention is to play the game only, not to earn the money. But in case of online money game, so while doing this activity, your main motto is to earn the amount and earn the profit. That's why clearly stated, including what virtual digital assets like cryptocurrency. So these are all covered under what specified actionable class. And why we discussed it clearly, because and later we have one section 7.2 read with Schedule 3 of the CGST Act 2017, and that is providing what negative list. And those transactions which are covered under this category are covered under negative list and not liable, neither considered as a supply of good nor considered as supply of services, and not liable for payment of GST. And here the actionable claims other than a special action, specified actionable claims are covered under negative list. So means actionable claims other than specified actionable claims means the first point, claims to any debt except secured debt. Best example is unsecured debt. Unsecured debt is not covered under the purview of GST. Is there any transactions we are dealing with unsecured debt? The best example is factoring. And some banks are there, they are selling their unsecured debt and receivables to the another third party at a lower price when they are unable to collect the amount from them. And then the third party will recover the amount from them and will be encashed. So the transaction, the factoring is done by the banker, is not said to be a supply. It is not covered under because it is covered under negative list. And the two in another point. So the first one, claims to any debt except secured debt. The best example is right to recover the insurance money and claims for arrears of rent, claims for future events, and unsecured loans and unsecured debentures, bills of exchange, promissory note, bank draft, bank guarantees, fixed deposit receipt, right to benefit the contract, etc. Not covered under supply of goods or services as it is covered under negative list. But coming to here, the bills of exchange and promissory note and any bank uh, drafts or any bearer checks, etc. And these are generally in the form of money. General in the form of money. As the money excluded, it is excluded from the goods. Excluded from the goods. That's why it is not covered under the purview of it is not covered under the GST. Okay. So actionable claim. In case of actionable claims, two things are there. Actionable claims in the form of money and other actionable claims. Actionable claims in the form of money is already excluded from the definition of the good as well as from the definition of the services. That's why it is not covered. And other actionable claims other than specified actionable claims are covered under Schedule 3. That's why it is not liable for payment of GST. Okay. And coming to the next one, services. So anything other than goods or money or security. As we already discussed, money and securities are not covered under both good as well as under the services. Okay. So anything other than good. So shall we say, sir, immovable properties are treated as a goods or not? Yes. Sorry, immovable property is not covered under the good. That's why, shall we consider it as a part of the services? Yes, it is forming part of the services. But it is also the transaction relating to that land or a building is covered under Schedule 3, nothing but negative list. That's why it is not liable for payment of GST. And it also includes activities relating to the use of money. Generally, the money we spend in relation to the business money we spend only for two activities. One is for purchase of the good, another one is for receiving the services. Purchase of the good is covered under the definition of the good, and receipt of the services is covered here. So any amount, any activity relating to the use of money and its conversion by cash or by any other mode or from one form or currency or denomination to another form or currency or denomination, for which separate consideration has been charged. So here I will explain it. Service. So first of all, service is nothing but anything other than good is said to be a what? Service. And it excludes money and securities. So money and security. And it includes activities involved, use of money or conversion of money from one form to another form or from one denomination to another denomination or from one currency to another currency where a separate consideration has been charged. Separate consideration has been charged. So here, one form to another form, one form to another form. For example, you deposited a DD So demand draft into the bank. So that is converted into the cash. So here the money converted from one form to the another form. For doing that activity, banker is collecting some amount of DD charges. So that is said to be about separate consideration. So, or coming to the bills of exchange, and you have a bill, and you went to the bank and discount the bill with the banker. Then banker will pay some bill amount after reduction of the discounting charges. Here, the that is converted from one form to the another form, bill to the cash. But the consideration is nothing but whatever the discounting charges collected by the banker. So, separate consideration is a mandatory thing. Separate consideration is mandatory thing. So for example, you went to the petrol bunk and gave 2000 note, and you took 100 rupee notes. So 100 rupee notes, so 20 100 rupee notes, and it just you converting it from one form to the another, sorry, one denomination to the another denomination. There a separate consideration is not there. If any activity done relating to these without any consideration, without any additional or separate consideration, it is not said to be a what service. And from one currency to another currency means from dollars are converted into the rupee, or pounds are converted into the dollar. So one foreign currency is converted into the Indian currency, or Indian currency is converted into the foreign currency. If it is involving a separate consideration, then only that is said to be a what service. Okay, so service includes anything other than good, anything other than good, but excludes money and the security. As we said, these two are not covered under the definition of good as well as under the service. It includes activities involving the use of money and conversion of money from one form to another form, or from one denomination to another denomination, or from one currency to another currency, where a separate consideration has been charged. Without having the separate consideration, these activities are treated as transactions in money. Best example, you go to the bank and you deposited 1 lakh amount into your bank account, and because of deposit, while depositing that amount, no additional consideration collected by the banker. So just that amount transfer from your pocket into your bank account. So no separate consideration is there. So that is not said to be a service. Okay, those are treated as what transactions in money. So the transactions in money, like principal amount deposited in or withdrawal from the bank, advances or repayment of principal sum, a loan to someone, conversion of 2000 into 500 rupee note. So these are all said to be not covered under the definition of what service. Okay, so these are the definitions of goods and services. And one more definition we have to know: what is meant by person. Person includes, generally the person definition is we considered as per income tax act only, except a few things. Okay, so like individual, HUF firm, including LLP company, a body corporate established under law of country outside India, or any corporation established by or under the law of country outside India, central government, state government, and local authority, trust, cooperative society, AOP, BOI, or AZP, these all are covered under the definition of a person. Okay, and coming to the business. So what is meant by business? And coming to the business, there are a general definition relating to the business, like any trade or commerce or manufacturing or a profession done by the party with an intention to earn the profit or not, are said to be about business. Are said to be about business. And it also includes some specific activities which are included as per the CGST Act. Okay, it includes what? So any trade. Trade is relating to what? Purchase or sale of the goods. And any commerce, nothing but it is relating to what? Service sector. And a manufacture, so production of the goods. And a profession, so means by getting a qualification, if you are doing any activity like a chartered accountant or cost accountant or a doctor or a lawyer, and they are doing their own practice, then those are covered under the definition of a profession. And vocation, vocation is relating to the skill based activity. For example, if the chartered accountant is dealing with is under the teaching profession. So that is called as what, vocation. And adventure. Adventure is a one type of activity along with your profession. One more thing you have. For example, a chartered accountant is having a passion about wildlife photography. So those are covered under the definition of what, adventure. And Vega or any other similar activity, whether or not it is for pecuniary benefits or not. Sorry, whether or not it is a for a pecuniary benefits or not, means you may do that activity with an intention to earn the profit or not. Those are covered under the definition of what, business. So, for example, so in case of religious places, they are selling the prasadams like laddus. So, for some amount, you purchased around 10 or 15 laddus by paying something in cash. So, shall we say they are getting any benefit from that, from the respected amount? Means they didn't, because their motto is to recover the cost, not to earn the profit. So but it is covered under the definition of the business, but their main intention is not to get any benefit. So their main intention is to recover the amount in terms of the cost they spend for producing, making that prasadam. Okay. So those are also covered under the definition of what, business. This is the general definition, like trade, commerce, manufacture, profession, vocation, or adventure, or vega, or any other similar activity, whether or not it is for pecuniary benefit, and any ancillary or supporting activities we done in relation to them are also covered under the definition of what, business. And these activities so may be done whether or not there is a volume, number of transactions may be done or not, irrespective of the frequency or continuity, regularity of such transactions, those are covered. So, so means, for example, some seasonal businesses are there, and they are selling, for example, mango traders are there, and they are doing their activity only in 3 months, summer season only, even though that is covered under definition of business. So we can't say it simply based on they didn't do that activity throughout the year. So irrespective of the frequency of the transactions, irrespective of the volume or continuity or regularity of such a transaction, we consider it as a business. And next, supply or acquisition of the good. And remember again, goods is nothing but what, including a capital asset and services in connection with commencement and closure of such a business. So, like for example, when the business is closed up by the another party, you wanted to purchase that business, means including their fixed assets, everything you are purchasing. That is also said to be a what, business. That is also said to be about business. So throughout the chapter, remember, good is means including capital good. Good means what? Including capital good. And provision by the club or association or society or any such body of the facilities or benefits to its member, as the case may be. And the services provided by the clubs. For example, some residential welfare associations are there. For example, they formed a club, and that club started a smart bazaar, and from there they are providing the goods to the members of the club at a discounted price. That is also said to be a what, business. Okay. And admission for consideration of a person to any premises, like admission to the libraries or exhibitions, etc. Those are also covered, book exhibitions, etc. Those are also covered under definition of what, business. Services supplied by a person as the holder of the office, which has been accepted by him in the course or furtherance of his trade or profession or vocation. And what is that means? For example, you are a lawyer. You are a lawyer, and you appointed as a chairperson of the bar council. Means in bar council, one separate cabin will be formed and separate chair will be arranged for you as a chairperson, and you occupying the position of the chairperson as a separate member instead of your profession. And there, those are said to be, that is also said to be a what, business. Services supplied by the person as the holder of an office which had been accepted by him, services as a holder of the office which have been accepted by him in the course or in furtherance of his trade or profession or vocation. So those are said to be a what, business. And the services provided by the race club by way of totalisator or a license to a bookmaker in such club, or any activity or a transaction undertaken by central government, state government, or any local authority in which they are engaged as a public authority. These are all covered under what? Specific businesses. And general trade, commerce, or manufacture, or profession, or any vocation, or adventure, or vega, or any similar activities done by the party with an intention to earn the profit or not, and any supporting activities they performed in relation to those, all are covered under the definition of the business. And these all points are not required for the exam purpose, but you have some questions like, for example, if you are a chartered accountant and you are having you are passionate about so wildlife photography. You so then is it cover any activity done in relation to the wildlife photography is said to be a business or not? Yes, it is a business, but you have to specify based on which activity it is a business. So like based on which activity means there what chartered accountancy is a your profession because you are doing that CA services by getting the qualification. But coming to the another one, wildlife photography. The question is asking about the activities relating to the wildlife photography. Those are covered under the definition of what adventure. Adventure is also said to be a what business. Okay. And coming to the consideration. Next, last definition, consideration. Any payment or made, any payment made or to be made, whether in money or otherwise. And it means the payment may be in terms of money, nothing but monetary terms, otherwise transfer what? Non-monetary value. What is meant by non-monetary? In terms of the kind or in terms of what services. And the monitor or the monetary value of any act of forbearance of an act. Any act of forbearance of an act. So any for doing an act, whatever the amount you get is also said to be a consideration. For refraining from an act, whatever the consideration you get, that is also said to be a what consideration. That is also said to be a what consideration. What does that mean? For example, for example, Mr. B is selling the business to you, selling the business to you. In return, you are paying around 20 lakh to that party, around 20 lakh to that party. So this is for doing an act. So this 20 lakh is said to be a what consideration. And along with that, Mr. B agreed. Mr. B agreed. He didn't start the business. He didn't do any activity in the respected sector for the next 5 years. So while selling the business, he also promised to you. He also promised to you. He don't do the activities relating to that sector for the next 5 years. For accepting that, you are paying some extra amount of 5 lakhs to that party. So one activity is for doing an act, another activity is for refraining from doing an act, forbearance. So both are covered under the definition of what consideration. The total consideration is how much amount? 20 plus by 25 lakhs. So in respect of or in response to or the for inducement of supply of goods or services of both, whether by the recipient or by another person. Okay, what is meant by the inducement of supply of goods or services of both? So means, for example, some persons are there, they bring the customers to the business. In return, they took the amount in the form of consideration. They will get the some benefits, and that is said to be a what inducement of supply of goods or services. Inducement, and that amount may be paid either by recipient or by any another person. So it may be paid by recipient, or on behalf of the recipient, third party also may pay. On behalf of the recipient, third party also may pay. That is also said to be forming part of consideration. Best example is in case of warranty. Like for example, bike services are there. You bought a bike. And at the time of purchase of the bike, the manufacturer gave so 5 free services or 1 year. They provide the services for 1 year at free of cost. And you went to the after completion after traveling for 2000 kilometers, you go to the service center and you submitted that voucher. Then they do the free of cost services, and there you are the recipient. They provide the service center providing the services to you. They are the provider, but you didn't pay any amount to that party, and but they get the amount not from you. So manufacturer of that bike are providing the amount to the uh, service center. Okay, and they are getting the amount from the third party, not from the recipient. So that amount of consideration may be paid either by recipient or by the third party on behalf of the recipient. Both is covered under the definition of what consideration. But it shall not include any subsidy by central government or state government. Any subsidy provided by central government or state government, so is not covered under the definition of what consideration. So what is that means? For example, for example, AP government enter into the contract with the classmates for supply of books to the government students, and it means government college students, to the government college students. And actually the price of the book is 150. But AP government promised they will pay around 100 rupee, and the remaining amount collected from the student. Remaining amount is collected from the student. Here, whatever the amount provided, whatever the amount paid by the government, 100 rupees, said to be a what subsidy. Is said to be a what subsidy. Simply is nothing but reduction in the price of the product. Reduction in the price of the product. So, is it forming part of here? What is the amount of consideration? We consider 150 rupee or 50 rupee. Means only 50 rupee is said to be a what consideration. Only 50 rupees said to be our consideration. Clear? So any subsidy provided by central government or state government. So remember, subsidy provided by central government. Is it forming part of the consideration? The answer is no. Any subsidy provided by the state government, it is also not forming part of consideration. If any subsidy provided by local authority, yes, it is forming part of consideration. So they clearly stated which is not including what subsidy provided by central government or state government, but local authority, any subsidy provided, that is covered under the definition of consideration. If the same thing is provided, what is the, for example, here the consideration is 50 only. But if the local authority is providing that subsidy, then the consideration is how much amount? 150. 50 plus subsidy provided by local authority 100, total 150. If any other private party is provided, that is also forming part of the consideration, then the consideration there is nothing but what 150. So any subsidy provided by the central government or state government is only not covered under the definition of consideration. If any subsidy provided by local authority or others is forming part of the consider. For example, the same thing is provided by a private company. Then what is the consideration? 150. Subsidy provided by other party is not forming part of consideration. Sorry, is forming part of consideration. So subsidy provided by central government or local state government are not forming part of consideration. And another one is deposits. Generally, deposits are of two types. One is the refundable deposits. non-refundable deposits. Refundable deposits or non-refundable deposits. Non-refundable deposits means those deposits which will apply to the supply in future, which will apply to the supply in future. And what is that means? For example, the best example is a rent deposit. So while taking the premises on rental basis or lease basis, you have to pay 2 to 3 months deposit to the owner. 2 to 3 months deposit to the owner. In the agreement, they clearly state that 2 to 3 months deposit, whatever you paid, will be adjusted to the last 3 months rent. Last 3 months rent, that is covered under what? Non-refundable deposit. Non-refundable deposit. So that is treated as a supply, and sorry, that is treated as a consideration and is liable for GST. And is liable for GST. But coming to the refundable deposit, for example, if the owner said like, so whatever the deposit you paid will be refunded to you at the time of vacating my premises. That amount won't be applied for the last month's rent. Last month's rent. So if we clearly stated that is covered under what? Refundable deposit, then it is not a consideration. It is not a consideration. And another example, for example, you pay the deposit while taking the gas connection and it won't be refunded to you. It won't be refunded to you. And that deposit is covered under non-refundable deposit. And while taking the landline connection, you have to deposit amount. You have to deposit the amount to the BSNL or any telecom service provider, and that amount will be refunded to you at the time of cancellation of that license. Then that is covered under what? Refundable deposit. It is not a consideration. Okay. Coming to the deposits. So deposits are forming part of the consideration. Deposits are forming part of the consideration if supplies adjust that amount of such a deposit towards the same supply. Towards the same supply. If the deposits are refundable in the nature, then those are not forming part of what? Consideration. If those are in the form of the refundable, those are not forming part of what? Consideration. Okay. Next, relating to the considerations, we have some clarifications. And the first one is supply by an artist in various states and supply of the goods by artist from the gallery. So remember, generally, for example, an artist is there who do the artwork and they display their artwork in different exhibitions and which may be in the same state or in the different state. And here two activities are there. First, artist transfer their artwork to the galleries or exhibition. And exhibition. Is it a supply or not a supply? Remember, it is not a supply because no additional consideration is there. No additional consideration. But while transferring that product from the artist to the gallery, though those will be supported by what? Delivery chalanas and along with what? E-way bill. And there for example, one customer so came to the gallery and see the all artworks provided by the different artists, and they selected one artwork of the artist and purchased. So from the gallery, one buyer purchased the artwork and he pay the amount. In return, he pay what? Say for example, 2 lakh amount is paid. Is it a consideration or not? Yes. it is a consideration and it is covered under the definition of what? Supply. So supply of the artwork by the artist to the gallery is not said to be a supply, as there is no consideration. But when one person, third party, came to that gallery or third party came to that exhibition and purchase one artwork and pay the amount, then that is a transaction covered under the definition of what? Supply, and is liable for payment of GST, because there is a separate consideration is there. And one more, the supplies of the artwork from one state to another state is said to be a what? Interstate supply, and will attract what? IGST only. And in case of supply by the artist through the gallery, there is no consideration from the gallery to the artist. When the artworks enter to the gallery for exhibition, the same is not a supply. For example, if the same thing, so when the buyer select any artwork displayed from the gallery and actual supply takes place here, because the buyer pay the amount of consideration and actual supply takes place here, then applicable GST is there. The applicable GST stands for, if it is intra-state supply, then CGST and SGST. If it is interstate supply, IGST is there. Okay. So this is relating to the supply by an artist. And another one is donations. So donations are generally of two types. One is the conditional donation, and another one is the unconditional donation. Conditional donation and unconditional donations are there. And for example, you went to the orphanage and you provide 1 lakh to the respected party, 1 lakh donation to the respected orphanage for doing their activities in the name of your father or in the name of your grandfather, etc. Is it a supply? Shall we consider that amount as a consideration or not? So depends upon whether it is a conditional donation or unconditional donation. Whether it is a conditional donation or unconditional donation. If it is a conditional donation, means what? So you enter into the contract with the respected orphanage house. So say they have to display your brand name, so on the top of the building, then only you agree to provide the donation to that party. That is a conditional donation. Then in that case, that is not said to be a donation. We consider it as an advertisement. So that is said to be a what? Supply. Sorry. That amount you paid is treated as what? Consideration, and is liable for GST. Unconditional donation is there. Unconditional donation, whatever you provided is not a consideration. So you provided that amount as a humanity to the respected party, and they may display your name or not, because in the orphanage houses, so you may saw some hoardings like so this is sponsored by so and so person, this is sponsored by so and so person, so this room related construction amount provided by so and so person, etc. And those are displayed by the displayed by the orphanage houses itself, and there is no condition of displaying that name. So that unconditional donations are not said to be a what? Consideration. And it means simply is nothing but, if the donation, anything, any amount donated by the party without expecting something, is always said to be a what? Donation, and is not forming part of consideration, and is not liable for GST. If any donation provided by you by expecting something in return, quid pro quo, so by expecting something in return, and that is said to be a what? Conditional donation, and is liable for payment of what? GST. So for example, here The donation received by charitable institute from the individual donor with quid pro quo. Quid pro quo means you are expecting something in return. Is it treated as what? Supply and is liable for GST. Any gift or donation to a charitable institute without expecting any commercial gain or advertisement, then no GST liability on that consideration is there. For example, you are a chartered accountant. You provide the donation to the orphanage house and they mentioned your name in the board. So, for example, Mr. Sravan Kumar and providing 1 lakh amount. That is, they are providing as per their policy and there is no commercial gain to the party. So that is not said to be a consideration. For example, if they're displayed as Sravan Kumar and in brackets a cost accountant or a chartered accountant or something. So if the profession is also mentioned and that will get some commercial gain, that will provide some commercial gain to that party. And that is a one type of an advertisement. So it is not covered under here and it is treated as a consideration and is liable for payment of GST. And placing the name board of the donation as a sign of the gratitude will not make the donation as a consideration. Will not make the donation as a consideration. And without getting the commercial gain, without providing the commercial gain to the respected donor, anything done by the orphanage house or anything done by that institute is not covered here, and it is not considered as a consideration and not liable to pay GST. Okay, and simply is nothing but if it is a conditional donation, it is a consideration and is liable for GST. If it is an unconditional donation, it is not a consideration, it is not liable for GST. Okay, and if any donation made with by expecting something in return, nothing but so quid pro quo. And if you want to get any commercial gain or if you want to get any advertisement through the donation, it is a conditional donation and is said to be a consideration and is liable for payment of GST. Okay, and another one, no claim bonus. First of all, no claim bonus is nothing but it is a one type of discount provided to the policy holder. So at the time of taking the policy or renewal of the policy. At the time of taking the policy or renewal of the policy. So any discount provided to the policy holder at the time of taking the policy or renewal of the policy is said to be about no claim bonus. No claim bonus. For example, one policy holder is there. Insurance company is there. They took the policy from the insurance company and the premium amount is say 1,50,000 and they provide the discount say 60,000 discount is provided and net premium paid 90,000. Net premium paid 90,000. Here, what is the amount of consideration? And no doubt, here the consideration is 90,000. And any discount provided at the time of making the policy or at the time of renewal of the policy is a forming part of the agreement. Forming part of the agreement. And that is not a consideration and is not collected by the insurance company. It is not collected by insurance company. So it is not a consideration and never be forming part of the consideration and is not liable for GST. Only amount liable for GST is nothing but what? 90,000. Only amount liable for GST is nothing but what? 90,000. Okay. So NCB means what? Discount allowed in premium amount. No supply. provided by insured to the insurance company in the form of agreeing to the obligation to refrain from an act of lodging the insurance claim during the previous year, NCB can't be considered as a consideration. And GST levied on net premium paid, not on the gross premium. So net premium is equal to what? Total premium minus a discount, nothing but NCB. And next, free samples. So free samples are means what? Those are providing at a free of cost. Those are providing at what? Free of cost. If anything provided at free of cost, shall we consider it as a consideration or not? Shall we consider it as a supply or not? And in the next few minutes, we'll discuss the definition of the supply. There we have one point under section 7.1c along with schedule 1. And there we discuss the transactions relating to what? The supply without consideration. Supply without consideration. And if the free samples covered under schedule 1, it is a supply and is liable for GST. If it is not covered there, it is not a supply and is not liable for payment of GST. Simple. Okay. And buy one, get one. So buy one, get one. In this case, for example, if you purchase one all out, and they are providing another all out. They are providing another all out machine to you. If you purchase one, you will get another one. So buy one, get one case. In that case, these are providing as a package to you. These are providing as a package to you. So in that case, so the free of those unit which are providing as a free of cost is said to be a consideration or not. Means yes, it is a forming part of consideration because individually that free product is not supplied by the party to you. That is provided along with the another product. Along with the another product. Without purchasing the first all out, they didn't provide the another all out at free of cost to you. So these are all providing as a package. If anything, if one supply is providing along with the another supply, means supply of good is providing along with the supply of another good, then those are treated as a bundled supply, and that bundled supply will be taxable as either composite supply or as a mixed supply. And we are going to discuss it under section 8 of CGST Act 2017. Okay. So in case of buy one get one, so the product you get at free of cost, is it a consideration or not? Is it a supply or not? It means so it is generally not provided as an individual product to you. It is provided only along with the main product. So you need to verify whether it is a naturally bundled or artificially bundled. So it depends upon that you have to say the taxability of that product. Okay. And these are the cases relating to the definitions. So we discussed till now what? Goods, services, and actionable claims, money, person, business, and consideration and related cases. So then coming to the definition of supply. In this case, it is provided under section 7 of CGST Act 2017. And in this case, we discussed section 7.1 and section 7.1a, 7.2, section 7.3. And along with that, you also discussed section 8, nothing but types of the supply, means composite or mixed supply. Those are also covered here. And in section 7.1, we have subclauses A, B, C is there. And in case of section 1A, so it along with that you have to read schedule 2 of CGST Act 2017, nothing but what? Deemed supply. And section 7.2 along with schedule 3 is provided. Simply is nothing but what? Negative list which are not covered under GST. And section 7.3 is providing the powers of the central government for reclassification of the transaction from the good to the service or service to the good. Until now, no transactions has been mentioned by the central government. That's why there is no relevance for this section as of now. And we have to discuss these three category along with section 8 in this case. Okay. And first, we'll deal with section 7.1a. So section 7.1a is nothing but includes supply includes the all forms of supply of goods or services or both, such as either by way of sale, transfer, barter, exchange, lease, license, disposal, or rental. So, any activity done by the party by way of sale, transfer, barter, exchange, license, rental, lease, or disposal. Total 8 categories are there. Among these 8 categories, any activity you performed, that is said to be our supply, and is made or agreed to be made for consideration. Means if an activity performed without consideration is not covered here by a person, either in the course or in furtherance of the business. Either in the course or in furtherance of the business. It must be a business activity. If any personal activity you performed is not covered here. If any personal activity is performed, it is not covered here. And here, the business test should be performed. Consideration must be there. And there must be an activity in relation to that 8 category. So all forms of supply of goods or services are both, such as sale, transfer, barter, exchange, lease, license, or disposal, so made or agreed to be made for consideration by a person in the course or in furtherance of the business is said to be a what? Supply. If any activity performed not in the course of the business, it is not a supply. If any activity performed without consideration, these are all not covered under section 7.1a. Not covered under section 7.1a. And based on this, for considering one item as a supply, we have to verify some factors. What are the factors we have to consider? And supply should be of goods or services. And if anything supplied other than goods or services is not covered here. Best example, money or securities. Anything done in relation to money or security is not covered under the definition of what? Supply. And the second one, supply should be made for consider. There must be a consideration. So there must be a consider. If anything made without consideration, is it a supply or not? Yes, it is not a supply. Except so section 7.1c along with the schedule 1, and there 4 transactions clearly stated in the schedule 1. Schedule 1 is dealing with the transactions which are covered under the definition of a supply, even though those are made without consideration. Without considering, if any activity not covered under this section 7.1c along with schedule 1, then it should be made for consideration only, then only it is a supply and liable for payment of GST. And another one, supply should be made either in the course or in furtherance of the business. What is meant by in the course in relation to the business, like purchase of the goods or sale of the goods or production of the goods? These are all covered under what? In the course of the business. But in furtherance of the business means for expansion of the business, whatever the activity you have done in relation to the merging activity, in relation to the amalgamation, in relation to the research and development of the research of the respected market in some area, these all activities are covered under what? In furtherance of the business. It should be simply is nothing but it is a business activity. Then only it is a supply. But one exception is there, that is provided under section 7(1)(b). Nothing but importation of services. Importation of services for consideration whether or not either in the course or in furtherance of the business is said to be a supply. Importation of services for consideration whether or not in the course or in furtherance of the business is said to be about supply. For example, I took the consultation services from Mercers ABC and Co, which is located in USA. I am in Vijayawada. I took the consultation services regarding my MS seat in US, and they provide the respected service. Here the supplier is in outside India, USA, receiver is in India, and the transaction is relating to purely my personal transaction. Is it a supply or not a supply? Yes, it is a supply, even though it is not covered under third point because some exception is there and is covered under section 7(1)(c). Sorry, 7(1)(b). Nothing but importation of services for consideration whether or not in the course or in furtherance of the business is said to be about supply. And along with this, two more points required to satisfy. Supply should be made by taxable person. Supply should be made by taxable person. What is meant by taxable person? The person who get the registration. Registered person or the person liable for registration under the CGST. Registered person is covered under taxable person. Even unregistered person is also a taxable person if he is liable for registration as per the provisions of CGST Act. So that is covered under taxable person. And the last one, supply should be a taxable supply. Supply should be a taxable supply. So if it is not a taxable supply, so means non-taxable supplies are there, like supply of alcohol meant for human consumption, supply of petrol, diesel, motor spirit, natural gas, and ATF, and those are not covered here. And it should be a taxable supply, and it should be liable for payment of some rate of GST. Then only it is covered. If these 5 points are covered, so under section 7(1)(a) is said to be a what? Supply. So supply of any all forms of supply of goods or services or both by way of sale, barter, exchange, lease, license, rental, disposal, made or agreed to be made for consideration either in the course or in furtherance of the business by a taxable person is said to be a what? Supply. Is said to be a what? Supply. These are the components of the supply. Okay. Next. So here, as we discussed, it should be of goods or services. Without consideration is not a supply except which is covered under Schedule 1. It should be made either in the course or in furtherance of the business. Exception is importation of services. And personal assets are not covered here. Okay. And the supply should be made for consideration. And the supply should attract GST made by taxable person. Taxable person means the person who is a registered person and who is liable to get registration. Both are covered. Both are covered. And the restriction being a taxable person is only on the supplier, whereas the recipient is either a taxable person or non-taxable person. So hence, supply between two non-taxable person does not constitute taxable supply under GST. Okay, this is about what section 7.1a. Coming to the section 7.1a, the person other than individual. So what is meant by the person other than individual? Firm, company, association, AOP, BOI, AZP. These are all covered under person other than individual, and its members are treated as distinctive persons. Any supply of the activities or transactions inter se shall be deemed to takes place from one such another is a deemed to be a supply. Is a deemed to be a supply. Means if any activity performed in between the firm and the partners or company and its shareholders and or AOP and its members or any association and its members, so these all are covered under definition of the supply, even in joint venture and co-venturers. Okay, like for example, one club is there. It established a smart buzzer and it providing the provisions to the members of the club at a discounted prices, and the transaction made in between club and its members, is it a supply or not a supply? Yes, because club and member are treated as a separate person. Any transaction made between them for consideration is said to be a supply, is said to be a what? Supply. And the provision of facilities provided by club or association, society or any such body to its members shall be treated as a supply. And what is the best example? And the residential welfare association provides the service of depositing the property tax bills of the residents in lieu of some nominal charges. And remember, here consideration must be there. If it is provided at free of cost, it is not covered under section 7.1a. It must be made for consideration. It must be made for consideration. And a club has opened a shop and members can purchase various goods from such shop at discounted price. Is it a supply or not? Yes, as per section 7.1a. Okay, next. Before that, one more point is that, and we'll discuss it later. 7.1b, nothing but importation of services for consideration either in the course or in furtherance of the business or not is said to be about supply. Importation of services. So remember, in case of importation, so goods are covered under Customs Act. So that's why not covered under GST. Only which are covered here, importation of services. There the supplier located outside India, recipient is located in India, and consideration must be there. Without consideration is not covered here. Business test is not required to perform. And the transaction may be done for the purpose of the business or for personal purpose. Both are covered under definition of the supply. So it may be done either in the course or in furtherance of the business or not. So both are covered under definition of supply. This is one of the exception to section 7(1)(a). It means what? Supply should be made either in the course or in furtherance of the business. Exception to 7(1)(a). So here 7(1)(b) is relating to what? The transaction made either in the course or in furtherance of the business or not is also said to be a supply. Importation of services for consideration either in the course or in furtherance of the business or not. Okay, next, coming to next one, section 7(1)(c) plus schedule 1. So means supply without consideration. How many we have? 4 transactions are there. 4 transactions. One by one we'll discuss. And permanent transfer of a disposal of the business asset. Permanent transfer of disposal of the business asset on which input tax credit has been availed will also be treated as a supply even if there is no consideration. Even if there is no consideration. Okay. So one is first, so the transfer of the personal assets. The transfer of the personal assets with the consideration, without consideration. The transfer of the personal assets with the consideration and without consideration. So is not covered under schedule 1. Is not covered under schedule because schedule 1 is applied only for business asset, only for business assets. And with the consideration, even if it is made with the consideration, it is not a supply. And another one, the transfer of the business assets. If the business assets are transferred temporarily and on permanent basis, temporarily on permanent basis. If it is made on temporarily, so it is covered under section 7(1)(a). Nothing but deemed supply. Temporary transfer of the business assets covered under deemed supply. Permanent transfer of the business assets and the two with the consideration, without consideration. With the consideration, that is covered under section 7(1)(a) and is a supply. 7(1)(a) is covered under supply. If it is made without consideration, you have to check one thing, whether ITC has been claimed. ITC is not claimed. If the ITC is not claimed, not covered under schedule 1 and is not a supply. The ITC is covered, ITC has been claimed, then it is a covered under schedule 1 and section 7(1)(c) and is a supply. Section 7(1)(c) and is a supply. Okay. So permanent transfer of the business asset. And here, what is meant by business asset? It covers what? Goods and including capital goods also. Goods and capital goods. For example, and for example, in our company, we have number of desktops, and the company took the policy to replace the all desktops with the laptops. So then company take a decision to give the respected desktops to the a orphanage house or wants to give to a educational institute at a free of cost. Then is it a supply or not a supply? As it is a supply, because the computer desktop, whatever the desktops are there, and those are nothing but what? Assets of the company. And any transfer, permanent transfer of the business asset. What is meant by permanent transfer? Without having any intention to take it back. That is called as permanent transfer. Permanent transfer of a business assets, so without consideration, is said to be a supply if ITC has been claimed. So if ITC was not claimed, then it is not covered under the definition of the supply. Okay, under schedule 1. So here, the GST is applicable on the sale of business assets, means goods as well as capital goods. It does not apply to the sale of personal assets, personal land or building or other personal assets. And exception and business assets on which ITC is blocked, because ITC, if ITC is a claim, then only it is covered here. For example, if the product is not eligible for claiming ITC, or if the product is covered under blocked assets, in that case, ITC is not claimed by the party. Then that is covered under exceptions to this one. Exception to the schedule 1. Exception to the transaction covered under schedule 1 means it is not covered under schedule 1. It is not covered under schedule 1. Then where it is covered only here. If it is made with consideration, it is a supply. Otherwise, so without consideration, it is not a supply. Business assets, though eligible for ITC, ITC has not claimed by a registered person. So if the ITC is not claimed, then it is also it is covered under ITC is not claimed. It is covered under this clause. It is not covered under Schedule 1 and is not a supply if it is made without consideration. If it is made with consideration, whether ITC is claimed or not claimed, always it is a supply as it is covered under Section 7(1)(a). Okay, next. So this is about what permanent transfer or disposal of business assets. Next, supply of goods or services between the related parties or the distinctive person. First, we discuss what is meant by related party. The person shall be deemed to be a related person when such persons are officers or directors of one and another. For example, I owned a company and you have a company, and you appointed me as a director or as an officer of your company, and I appointed you as a director in my company. That officers or directors of one and another's business, those are leads to what? Related party. Okay, and a legally recognized partners in a business, nothing but partners. And employer and employee are treated as a related persons. Employer and employee are treated as a related person. And just we discussed transactions relating to the employer and employee. First, anything provided by employer to the employee employee to the employer. If and it means here employee providing the services to the employer as a part of employment agreement. In return, they get what? Salary, perquisite, allowances, etc. It is covered under Schedule 3, not liable for GST. It is covered under Schedule 3. So, Section 7.1.7.2. Section 7.2. And if it is any services provided by the employee to the employer beyond the employment agreement, then it is a supply under GST as per Section 7.1a, provided if there is a consideration. Provided if there is a consideration, and it is liable for payment of what? GST. If it is made without consideration, then you need to check against Schedule 1. In case of Schedule 1, these activities not covered. So that's why it is not a supply. If it is meant for consideration, anything provided by the employee to the employer beyond the employment agreement, and what type of services are there? For example, if the employee providing a guarantee, or if the employee do an activities relating to the amalgamation or a merger of our business with the another party, so they involved in those activity. Actually, these all activities are not forming part of the employment agreement. For doing these all activity, employer providing some consideration to that party, then it is said to be a consideration and is covered under supply, and the transaction is liable for payment of GST. And if it is provided by the employer to the employee, if it is provided by employer to the employee, employer providing the activities to the employee as a part of employment agreement, as a part of employment agreement. So like, for example, any PF, ESI, etc., those are all provided. It is not a supply. If the employer providing any gift to the employee, so generally providing of gift is not forming part of the employment agreement. Providing of gift is not forming part of the employment agreement. Then if the employer providing any gift to the employee, then is it a supply or not? If the gift worth is 50,000 per employee per annum, it is exempted. If the gift worth is more than 50,000, then it is a taxable supply. So, for example, if the gift provided by the employer to the employee for worth rupees 75,000, 75,000, then how much amount is liable for payment of GST? The whole amount, not the excess amount. Total 75,000 is liable. Total 75,000, and that 50,000 is counted per employee per annum. Per employee per annum. Okay, clear? These are the transactions relating to the employer and employee, and these two are treated as what? Related parties. And any person directly or indirectly owns, controls, or holds 25% more of the outstanding voting stocks or shares of both of them. For example, Mr. Abhi has 30% of the staking in A Limited, 25% of the staking in B Limited. So generally, for some transactions, some transactions are there which requires a special resolution for getting the approval. And while they want a special resolution, so they need to get 75% of the members' approval is required. So in that case, this party play the key role. So if the party who is having the control of 25% or more than 25% of the stock or shares, then the two parties are treated as a related parties to each other. Those are treated as what? Related parties to each other. And one of them directly or indirectly control the others. One of them directly or indirectly control the others. Like holding company and subsidiary company. And both of them directly or indirectly control the third. Both of them directly or indirectly controlled by a third party. For example, A Limited is having the 80% of the staking in B Limited, and it is having 60% of the staking in C Limited. And for getting the control, 51% is enough, right? So here A Limited is having 80% in B Limited, and A Limited is having 60% in C Limited. Then A Limited is controlling B Limited as well as C Limited. Then B Limited and C Limited are treated as what? Related party. And together they directly or indirectly control a third party. Together they directly or indirectly control the third party. Then that two are treated as what? Related party. They are the members of same family. And here, what is meant by family? And here we have the definition for family. It covers what? Spouse and children. Spouse and children. And these are dependent or not. Whether those are completely dependent or not, those are covered under family. But coming to the parents, grandparents, brothers, and sisters of the person, if they wholly or mainly dependent on the said person, if they are dependent on the said person, then only those are covered. If they are independent, those are not covered under family member. So spouse and the children, these two, whether those are dependent or not, are covered under the definition of family. But coming to the parents, grandparents, brothers and sisters are covered under the family members only if they wholly dependent or mainly dependent on that person. If they are independent, those are not covered under definition of the family. Okay. And a family member is covered, and a person who associated in the business of one another, in that one is a sole agent, sole distributor, sole consignor, however described of the other, shall be deemed to be what? Related party. So these are all covered under the definition of what? Related persons. And employer and employee related transactions we discussed. However, services provided by employee to the employer in the course of employment not treated as a supply, and as it is covered under Schedule D. Service supplied by employer to employee for consideration is a supply. However, services provided by employer to the employee can be subjected to GST if these are of personal use of the employee. If it is meant as a part of the employment agreement, it is not covered under supply. If it is covered under personal use of employee, then only it is covered under definition of our supply. Schedule 1 provides the gifts not exceeding 50,000 in the value in a financial year by the employer to employee shall not be treated as a supply. For example, employer gives Diwali gift to the employee worth 1,75,000. More than 50,000 is there. That is a supply. But how much amount is liable for GST? Whole amount. Total 1,75,000 is liable for payment of GST. Okay. Then, what is meant by distinctive person? So, distinctive person definition is provided in sections 25 of GST Act 2017. So, if the person who is having more than one registration, either in same state or in different state, either in same state or in different state, then each registration is treated as a distinctive person. Each registration is treated as a distinctive person. So means, for example, Mr. A is having branch 1, branch 2, branch 3 and branch 4. Branch 1 and branch 2 are in AP, branch 3 in Tamil Nadu, branch 4 in Telangana. And everyone is having separate registration. Everyone is having separate registration. Then each branch is treated as a distinctive person to another. Distinctive person to another. The person who is having more than one registration, either in the same state or in the different states, either in the same union territory or in different union territory, then each such registration is treated as a distinctive person. Is treated as a distinctive person. And branch 1 to branch 2, branch 1 to branch 3, branch 1 to branch 4, and branch 2 to branch 1, branch 2 to branch 3, branch 2 to branch 4. Every registration is treated as a distinctive person to another. Okay. Next, where a person who has obtained or is required to obtain registration or required to obtain registration in a state or union territory in respect of establishment has an establishment in another state or union territory. For example, Mr. A is having branch 1 in AP and branch 2 in Telangana, and both are not getting any registration, and those are going to get registration or not. Both are, as of now, those are unregistered, and shall we treated both of them as a distinctive person. So those are treated as a distinctive to one and another. So who are liable to get the registration? Not getting the registration, liable to get the registration, also said to be a distinctive person. And third one, transactions between different locations with a separate registration name of same legal entity will qualify as a supply under GST. And it simply is nothing but interstate stock transfer. Interstate stock transfer between two branches of the same entity which are located in the different states are treated as a supply and is liable for payment of GST. So stock transfers or branch transfer with a separate GST registration. So whether intra-state supply or interstate supply. Okay. So intra-state supply with interstate. For example, branch 1 and branch 2 is in AP, is in Telangana, and both are having the separate registration. Both are having separate registration. That is what interstate stock transfer, and those are liable for GST. And for example, both are in AP and having the separate registration, and those are covered under intra-state stock transfer. Those are also liable for GST. But intra-state is not liable. Those are exempted. We'll discuss it later. And branch 1 and branch 2, one is having their, both are in AP, and one is having the registration, another one is not having the registration, then that is not treated as a supply and is not liable for payment of GST. So transactions between different locations of same legal entity so will qualify as a supply under GST. Supply under GST. Okay. So this is the one, transactions made between related parties. Supply of goods or services between related persons and distinctive persons are treated as a supply even if it is made without a consideration. Next, principal and agent. Principal and agent. So, first of all, coming to the principal agent relation, generally there are two types of the agents are there. One is the selling agent, another one is a procuring agent or buying agent or the buying agent. For example, Mercedes ABC and Co. appointed Mr. A as a agent. Mr. A as a agent. Then what they do? They supply goods to the agent. Then agent sell to the customers. Sell to the customer. In that case, when we consider Mr. A as a agent as per schedule 1. So, as per schedule 1, A is treated as a agent only if he supply the goods to the customers in his name. He supply the goods to the customer in his name. If he supply the goods to the customers in the name of Mercedes ABC and Co. In the name of Mercedes ABC and Co. Then remember, A is not an agent as per schedule 1. Is not a agent as per schedule 1. So whether it is a selling agent or whether it is a buying agent. In case of buying agent, what they do, for example, if the company is outside the city, so they appointed one person in the city as a buying agent. Then the company called to him if any goods they require. Then the agent purchase the product and transport it to the company. So in that case, that party is treated as a buying agent. But whether that party purchase the goods in his name or in the name of company, if he purchase the product in his name, he is treated as an agent as per schedule 1. If he purchase the goods in the name of company directly, then he is not rated as a agent. Okay. So supply of, and remember, this section is applied only for supply of goods and not applied for supply of services. And by the principal to the agent, and the agent will supply them on behalf of the principal, that selling agent, and by the agent to the principal. So when the agent receive the goods on behalf of the principal is said to be a what? Procuring agent. And if the one person considered as a agent only based on whether invoice for further supply made by agent is provided to the customer in the name of principal or agent. If the invoice is raised in the name of principal, then he is not considered as a agent. If the invoice is raised in the name of agent, then only he is considered as a agent for the purpose of schedule 1. For the purpose of schedule 1. If the goods procured by agent on behalf of the principal are invoiced in the name of agent, then further provision of said goods by the agent to the principal would be covered in this entry. Okay. So here two transactions are there. The first transaction is supply in between company and agent, and supply in between agent and customer. So whether the first transaction is covered under schedule 1 or not depends upon the second transaction. If the second transaction is made in the name of A, in the name of agent, then the first transaction covered under schedule 1. Understood? If the secondary transaction, if the agent sell the goods to the customer in his own name, then the supply by the company to the agent is covered under Schedule 1. Otherwise, if the agent supply the goods to the customers in the name of company directly, not in his name, then the supply by company to the agent is not covered under Schedule 1. Is not covered under Schedule 1, right? Next, coming to the Delcredary agent. So whether Delcredary agent falls in the definition of agent or not is purely as per Schedule 1 only. So in the same way, if the supply made by the agent to the customer is in his name or in the name of company, if it is done in his name, then he is treated as an agent as per Schedule 1, otherwise he is not an agent. And Delcredary agent, and accordingly we have to do. But if the Delcredary agent is not covered under the definition of an agent as per Schedule 1, not covered in definition of agent as per Schedule 1, then three transactions are there. Supply of goods from supplier to the recipient directly, it is taxable as a supply of goods. And supplier of agency services from DCA to the supplier of or recipient or both, it is also a taxable supply. So those are treated as what agency services. So, and the supply of extension of loan services by DCA to the recipient. So one is DCA to the supplier, DCA to the customer. This is agency service and is taxable. And this is nothing but what? So depends upon in his name, in the name of company. In his name is an agent, not an agent. So in the his name, I think this is covered under supply of goods. It is not a supply of goods. And supply of goods. In this scenario, the transaction deemed to be directly made by supplier to the customer. So supplier to the customer, that is a taxable under GST. And last one, if supply of extension of loan service by the recipient to the so DCA to the recipient, here the extension of loan by DCA is treated as separate service, and interest charged on that loan is not forming part of value of supply of goods by the supplier. Okay, so if he is not an agent, then the transaction made by DCA to the customer is said to be a supply of is said to be a what, is not a not a supply of good. Okay, so remember, for example, just here invoice raised in the name of A, not raised in the name of A here. So transaction made between supplier to the agent, agent to the supplier, and transaction made between supplier to the agent. This is covered under Schedule 1. This is a supply of goods. This is a supply of goods, and accordingly it is taxable. And here supplier to the agent, this is not covered under Schedule 1. Agent to the customer, sorry. Sorry. And here also agent to the customer. Agent to the customer is also not a supplier because invoice is not made by in between the party. And in this case, we treated the transaction as supplier to the customer directly. It is a supply of goods. And accordingly, we have to taxable. Okay. So, if the invoice raised in the name of agent, then agent to the customer is a supply of goods and is taxable. If the invoice is not raised in the name of agent, then only one transaction is there, supplier to the customer directly. First of all, agent existence is not there. And the extension to this one. So, for example, agent providing loan service to the customer. Loan service to the customer. In that case, you have to verify because in this scenario, he is providing the two things. One is supply of good plus loan service. You have to verify whether it is a composite or a mixed supply as per section 8 of CGST Act. Accordingly, we have to taxable it. But here, agent providing loan service to the customer is treated as a separate financial service because the transaction between agent to the customer is not a supply here because there is no existence for agent here. So in relation to supply of goods. So it separate financial transaction is treated as a supply of service. And accordingly we have to taxable it. Is it treated as what supply of service? This is simply about what agency services. Okay. The transaction made between supplier and agent. Okay. I hope you guys understood. So simply when the transaction made by the supplier through the agent, then invoice is raised by agent, then supplier between supplier to the agent covered under schedule 1, agent to the customer is a taxable, is a supplier as a supply of goods. If the invoice is raised in the name of supplier directly, then the transaction deemed to be made by supplier to the customer directly. Then no existence, no transaction exists between supplier to the agent, and that is not covered under schedule 1. Okay. So this is about what principal to agent. And the next one, importation of services by a taxable person from the related person or from any of his other establishment outside India in the course or in furtherance of the business. And remember, the related party definition already we discussed, right? Related party definition is already we discussed. So here, importation of services. So we have under section 7(1)(b), section 7, sorry, 7(1)(c) plus schedule 1 plus schedule 1. Here, first, supplier should be located outside India in both cases. And recipient should be located in India. And third one. So consideration must be there and not required. So schedule 1 consideration is not required. Next. Business test not required. Even personal transaction covered here. And only are covered. Only business transactions are covered. And one more point in addition to this, if the supplier is a related party or associated enterprise. Supplier is not a related party or associated enterprise. If the supplier is not a related party or associated enterprise, supplier is not a related party or associated enterprise, it is not a supplier. If he is a related party or associated enterprise, then it is covered under section 7(1)(c) and schedule 1. And it is a supplier. And it is a supplier. And both cases are applied only for goods. Only for services, not for goods. Supply of goods are covered under customs duty. Supply of services are only covered in these two clauses. 7(1)(b) and 7(1)(c). Schedule 1. So importation of services by a taxable person. So the recipient should be a taxable person and the supplier should be related party or any other associated enterprise located outside India. It should be done in relation to the business. It should be done in relation to the business. Then only that is said to be a supply and is liable for payment of GST. Clear? Next. So as we said, these are not applied for goods and it is liable under what? RCM basis. Reverse charge mechanism, we'll discuss it in next class. Okay. So this is about what we discussed till now, only section 7(1)(a). And coming to the next section 7(1)(a) and schedule 2. Classification of the supply, whether it is covered under supply of good or supply of services. So first, transfer. So if the title in goods is a transfer, then that is a supply of a good. So title means it is a sale of the good. And the taxability is covered under section 7(1)(a). Any activity by way of sale, transfer, barter, exchange, etc. There the sale is covered here. And the right in the goods are undivided share in goods without transfer of title in the good. Just right in the property is a transfer. And if you are providing the product on rental basis, if you are providing the goods on rental basis, so those are covered. So under supply of services. And title, transfer of title in the goods under an agreement which stipulates that property in goods will pass at future date. At a future date upon the payment of full consideration. And the best example is hire purchase. So this is treated as a what? Supply of goods. In case of hire purchase, and initially while entering into the contract, they transfer possession of the good, but the total amount will be paid in future. So that is covered under supply of goods only. Next, land or building. So the land or building, so lease, tenancy, easement, license to occupy the land simply is nothing but rental purpose. So that is covered under supply of service. But the lease or letting out of a building including commercial, industrial, residential complex for business or commerce if any residential complex is provided on rental basis for personal purpose, then that is exempted. That is exempted. Only for business or commerce. So for providing the business or for providing the service, then only it is covered under what? Supply of service. Is covered under what? Supply of service. So lease, tenancy, easement or license to occupy the land or a building. Land is a supply of service. Coming to the building, if it is meant for business or commerce purpose, that is covered under supply of service. And treatment or process simply is covered under job work. So I provided my shirts. For example, I'm a cloth merchant and provided the plain shirts for designing purpose. So only the work, only the part they did is nothing but designing part. So that is covered under supply of services only. And next, transfer of the business asset. Transfer, disposal of business assets with or without consideration under the direction of the person carrying the business. Nothing but management is said to be about supply of goods. So transfer or disposal of the assets. And goods forming part of so goods with the consideration, if it is meant for with the consideration 7(1)(a), if it is meant for without consideration, then taxable as per schedule 1, right? Taxable as per schedule. And remember, in schedule 2, they are providing the classification of the supply, but the taxability is covered under schedule 1, sorry, section 7(1)(a) only. Section 7(1) only. So A, B, C, etc. And goods forming part of the assets on ceasing to be a taxable person. So when the person ceased to be a taxable person, on that day, whatever the goods are there, those are said to be a supply of goods. If the party already claimed ITC on the respected product, then that ITC should be refunded, returned to the government. Should be returned, should be repaid. But some exceptions are there. If the business is transferred as a going concern to another party, and it means whatever the goods forming part of the assets on ceasing to be a taxable person is not said to be a supply of goods. When that business is handover as a going concern to the another party, means that party will continue that business. That party will use that goods for resale purpose, and the business is carried on by the personal representative who is deemed to be a taxable person, and the business is not going to be shut down, and that will be continued by another party. So generally, while purchasing the goods, we pay the tax to the government, GST to the government. That is treated as input tax, and that input tax is claimed by the party while selling the product to the customer. So, and means while collecting the output tax and while depositing that output tax to the government, this input tax will be claimed. And only you can claim the input tax only if they are if they were sold to the another party. If they were sold to the another party. Just imagine if the business is going to be closed, how can you sell the goods to the another party? And if you are seized to be a taxable person and you are becoming a non-taxable person, so becoming a non-taxable person means you are becoming a unregistered person, you are holding the respected goods, means that goods are not eligible for claiming the ITC. If ITC already claimed on the respected good, you have to repay to the government. You have to repay to the government. If the ITC was not claimed on the respected product, then no need to pay anything to the government, and it is not a supply. Okay. And next, others. And the renting of immovable property is said to be a supply of service. And construction of commercial or residential complex, except where entire consideration has been received after issue of completion certificate where required by the competent authority or before its first occupation, whichever is earlier. So remember, the construction was completed. Construction was completed on 1st May 2024. 1st May 2024. If the total amount received by the party after 1st May 2024, and either completion date, and means completion date deemed to be completed on what date? On what date you get the certificate, or the date of first occupation, whichever is earlier. So if the complete consideration you get after the respected completion date, that is covered under sale of immovable property and is not covered under the GST. If any amount you received before getting the completion certificate or before the first occupation and before the date of completion, you are getting any amount, then that amount is treated as a supply of a service and is liable for payment of GST. Okay. And temporary transfer or permitting the use of employment of any intellectual property right? Best example, copyright. So that is covered under what? Supply of a service. And development, designing, programming, customization, adoption, upgradation, enhancement, implementation of information technology software is a supply of service. Agreeing to the obligation to refrain from an act or to tolerance an act or a situation to do an act. So to do an act means doing an activity of a supply of good or supply of service. That is covered. And it means you are purchasing entering into the contract for you agreed for providing the educational services. In return, you collected amount. That is for to do an act. So that is supply of service. For example, you entering into the contract with another party and you collected around 5 lakhs or 6 lakhs from the respected party. You said, I'm not doing the I won't start the business. I won't start my own business in the next few years. Then that is relating to refrain from an act, that is a supply of service. And tolerating an act. Tolerating an act means, for example, you sold the goods to the party. So then in the contract itself, you said you need to pay, debtor required to pay the total amount in 30 days. If the party is unable to pay the amount within 30 days, then you have the right to collect the penalty or interest on the respected amount. And here they are tolerating an act, violating a provisions mentioned in the contract, and that is covered under toleration of an act, and that is also covered under what? Supply of service. So these are all the examples. And composite services and works contract means construction activities, and transfer of right to use any goods for any purpose, whether or not for specified person, for cash or deferred payment or other valuable consideration, are also covered under supply of services. And supply of goods for the restaurant services are covered here. An unincorporated association, like supply of goods by unincorporated association or body or person to its members, and it is covered under section 7(1)(a). Okay, and so this is and coming to the negative list. And negative list, those activities covered under negative list are not a supplies, and those are not liable for payment of GST. And negative list are provided in 3 ways: through the Schedule 3, and through the notifications, and through the clarification by way of circular. First, we discuss Schedule 3. Coming to Schedule 3, some services provided by employee to the employer as a part of employment agreement is already we discussed, and salary allowances packages are not said to be a supply, and those are forming part of the employment agreement and is not liable for payment of GST. Services by any court or tribunal established under any law for time being enforced, and means for accepting the cases, a nominal fees is collected by the court, and those fees are covered under the definition of what? So those fees are not said to be a supply and is not liable for payment of GST. But any activity provided by the court or tribunal other than in relation to the legal services, like if the court providing some of the premises on rental basis for running the canteen or for running the any Xerox machine, so it provide the rental services to the bar council for doing their activity, and those are all covered under supply, and those are liable for payment of GST. Only legal services. For accepting those cases, the nominal fees collected by the court or tribunal are not said to be a service. Not said to be a supply, and is covered under negative list. and functions entrusted by performed by MP, MLA, MLC, and member of panchayat, member of municipality, and member of other local authority. And duties performed by the person who hold any post in pursuance of the provisions of the Constitution, like President of India, Governor, and Vice President, and the Chief Election Officer, and the Lok Sabha Speaker, Chief Justice, Chairperson, Chairman of the Union Public Service Commission. These are all not covered under the definition of not liable for payment of GST. The duties performed by any person as a chairperson or member or director in a body established by central government or state government or local authority and who is not deemed as a employee before commencement of this clause. And sale of land is completely covered under negative list. But coming to the sale of a building, sale of building where the entire consideration received by the party after the date of completion. What is meant by date of completion is that the date on which completion certificate get from the competent authority or the date of first occupation, whichever is earlier. After that date, if any and total consideration we paid, that is covered under sale of immovable property and is not and is covered under negative list. Okay. And actionable claims. Already we discussed. So actionable claims other than specified actionable claims like lottery tickets, betting, gambling, casino, online money gaming, etc. are covered under goods. The remaining actionable claims are covered under negative list. Services of funeral, burial, crematorium, and mortuary services, including transportation of deceased body, so are covered under negative list. Okay. Services by way of activity in relation to the functions entrusted to the panchayat. So like providing the roads and water services, and these are all covered. Services by way of grant of liquor licenses by state government against consideration in the form of license fee or application fee. Those are not covered under, not liable for payment of GST. That is covered under negative list. Yes. Interstate movement of areas, modes of the conveyances between the distinct two persons, including trains, buses, trucks, tankers, trailers, vessels. So containers, aircrafts carrying the goods or passengers are both for repairs and maintenance are covered under negative list. And interstate movement of rigs, tools, spares, and all goods on wheels like cranes are also covered here. Okay, but some exceptions are there to the two clauses. Movement of such good is for further supply of same good. Then that is a supply. And GST is levied on repairs and maintenance done for such goods. So if those are transported for repairs and maintenance purpose, that movement is covered under negative list, but that repairs and maintenance service is liable for GST. Okay. These are covered under Section 7 of CGST Act 2017. And next, Section 8. So is nothing but bundled supply. So what is meant by bundled supply? If the supply of good or services providing along with supply of good, supply of another good or services as a package, means one good is providing along with another product, or one service is providing along with another product. So good is providing with along with another good, or service is providing with another service, good is providing with another service, service is providing with another good. So those are provided as a package. Then those are covered under what? Bundled supply. Those are covered under what? Bundled supply. And this bundled supply are classified into two: composite supply and mixed supply. And composite supply stands for if one supply is providing along with another supplier. One supplier is providing along with another supplier as a package where one of the supply is principal supply, where one of the supply is principal supply. Then that supply is treated as a what? Composite supply. So, for example, while purchasing the laptop, they provide what? Laptop along with the charger. They provide the laptop along with the charger. So this is covered under what? Composite supply. Here one product is provided along with another product. One product is provided along with the another product. So here the main objective of the party is to sell the laptop, not the chargers, right? Main objective is to sell the laptop, and one of the supply is the principal supply, and that too those should be naturally bundled. What is meant by naturally builded? And those are interdependent, and those cannot be sold independently. Those cannot be sold independent. From the supplier point of view, how to tell? And after purchasing the laptop, if the charger will not work, you may purchase the charger separately, so from the another dealer. But while purchasing the new product or while selling the new product by the laptop dealer, he can't sell the charger separately. So he is providing the charger along with the laptop. He is providing as a package only. Those are naturally bundled. So those are covered under what? Composite supply. Here the taxability is completely depends upon. So the whole supply is liable. The whole supply is liable based on principal supply. Based on what? Principal supply. And another one, mixed supply. Here also one supply is providing along with another supply as a package which are not naturally bundled, and there is no principal supply, which are not naturally but they are artificially bundled. For example, as a part of Dasara season, and the smart buzz are selling the washing machine, TV, and a fridge as a package for 45,000 rupees. And these are natural, these are not naturally bundled. Means when we say it is naturally bundled, and the product can't be sold without the another product, because here washing machine can be sold by the part independently, TV also can be sold independently, fridge also can be sold independently. As a festive season, both those are artificially bundled together and provided as a package, and those are covered under what? Mixed supply. Those are covered under what? Mixed supply. So for example, washing machine is liable at 18%, and this is at 18%. For example, this is liable at 28%. Then what is the highest rate among these all product? 28%. Then the whole supply 45,000 is liable at the highest rate among the all supply. At the highest rate among the all supply. Okay, composite supply is a naturally bundled supply, but mixed supply is not a naturally bundled, it is artificially bundled. Composite supply taxability depends upon the principal supply, but a mixed supply taxability depends upon the product or the supply having the highest rate of tax liability. Highest rate of tax liability. Based on that, whole supply is liable. Whole supply is liable. These are the two things. And here that combination supply, that combination may be good and good, or good and service, service and service, or good service and good also. anything. For example, so you are transporting the product. You are transporting the product, and the supplier agreed to deliver the product at the customer premises. And the supplier is in Vizag, and we are at the customer is in Vijayawada. Then, while transferring the product, he transport the goods, and also he make the insurance of the respected product, and he pay the freight charges. And here, supply of the goods is provided as a combination of good, freight charges, and insurance. And these three are providing as a package. And this package consisting of what good as well as what services also. And these are all naturally bundled. These are all what naturally bundled. In that case, what is the principal supply? Supply of a good. Then the whole amount is liable as a supply of a good. Whole amount is liable as a supply of a good. But in case of mixed supply, those are artificially bundled. And among these all supplies, so which supply is having high rate of tax liability, accordingly we have to levy the tax. Accordingly, we have to levy the tax. Okay, these are the composite supply. So composite supply and mixed supply. Okay, and so coming to the next step. So some clarifications we have, and first relating to the supply of books, pamphlets, brochures, envelopes, and annual reports, and leaflets, and cartoons, and designs, logos, name, address, or other content supplied by the recipient of such a supply. So remember, in case of printing of the books, pamphlet, brochures, and annual reports, etc., where only the content is supplied by the publisher or the person who owns the usage rights to the intangible inputs, while the physical inputs, including the paper used for printing, belonging to the printer. Then the supply of printing is the principal supply, and therefore that would be constituted as a supply of service. So just imagine the total content relating to the printing is provided by the party, but the paper is used by the publisher, printer, who make the printing. And here the main activity of the respected party is providing the printing. And here it is a combination of two things. So here it is a combination of two things. One is the printing, and he used what paper also for doing the printing. But among these, this is what composite, or this is a bundled supply. Among whether these are naturally bundled or artificially bundled, means natural, without paper they can't print, they can't give the printing, right? So these are the composite supply, covered under composite supply, because these are the naturally bundled. Among them, what is the principal nature of supply? Printing. That's why it is covered under what? Supply of service. Supply of service. In case the supply of printed envelopes, letterheads, letter cards, printed box, tissues, napkins, wallpapers, etc. So supplied by the recipient of the goods, but made using physical inputs, including paper belonging to the printer. Predominant supply is that of goods, and the supply of printing of the content is ancillary to the principal supply of goods. Therefore, such supply would constitute supply of goods. For example, some transactions, already we have some elements we saw in social media. So like for example, you can customize your t-shirts also. You can customize your t-shirt. If you provide any content, to the respected party, then that party purchase the t-shirt, and he print that content on the t-shirt, and he will supply. There, the main intention of the party is to sell the t-shirt. Along with that, they do the printing activity also. In that case, so that total sale is treated as a supply of a good, not the supply of services. So these type of activity, so on print basis, on print. So like tissues or napkins, etc. So if, for example, some tissue companies are there, some napkin companies are there. So if you if you provide the, for example, if you provide the data or if you provide the logo to the respected party, then they do what? On the empty tissues, they print the respected logo and supply it to you. Their main activity is not to provide the printing service. Their main activity is to sell the respected product. That's why that is covered under supply of good, not the supply of services. But in the previous case, the main activity of the party is printing. In case of books printing, so if you, for example, I wrote a book and I give the data to that party, and that party arrange the paper and make the printing activity and supply the books to me. And their main activity is providing the printing, not to sell the paper, right? And there it is covered under supply of service. But coming to here, their main activity is to sell the envelopes or letter cards or tissues or printing boxes or napkins, etc. If you provide the logo or content which is required to be printing on the respected item, then they print it and supply it to you. That is covered under supply of goods. Okay. And food supplies to the patients. And food supplies to the patients as advised by the doctor is a part of composite supply of healthcare services and not treated as separately. But other supply of food by the hospital to the patients or their attendants or visitors are taxable. Okay. So as per the instruction of the doctor, if anything supplied by the hospital to the patient, then those are forming part of the healthcare services. Those are forming part of the healthcare services, and those are treated accordingly. And that food is not treated separately there. Supply of food or beverages at cinema hall. Supply of food or beverages in cinema hall is a taxable as a restaurant services as long as food and beverages are supplied by way of or are a part of the service and supplies independent of cinema exhibition service. For example, while booking the ticket itself, you are purchasing those all things as a package. Then it is treated as a mixed supply and is liable for GST accordingly. But if those are providing separately and you go to the cinema and you purchase the ticket, you enjoy the movie, in the break time you purchase the food. Then that food is treated as a separate item and that is taxed as a restaurant service. Where the sale of cinema tickets and supply of food and beverages are clubbed together, and such bundled supply satisfy the test of composite supply, and entire supply will attract GST at the rate applicable to service of exhibition of cinema at the principal supply, composite supply. Okay. And bus body building. In case of bus body building, there is a supply of goods and services. So thus the clarification of this, the classification of this one is a composite supply, as the goods or services were depending upon whether supply is the principal supply, which may be determined on the basis of facts and circumstances of each case. Bus body building means developing the total body of the respected bus. So you may do the painting work and you may do the designing work, so etc. So that is purely, sometimes you require some material you have to use while doing the bodybuilding of the respected bus. So it is covered under composite supply. Retrendering of the tires. So retrendering of the tire simply nothing but repairing work to the respected tire. So it is a composite supply. The predominant nature of the element is a processing of retrendering, nothing but supply of service. For example, if if the old tire, you have the old tire, you are doing the retrendering work on that old tire, you are supplying the tire also. Then that is said to be a supply of good. Which part of composite supply is the principal supply must be determined keeping in the view nature of the supply environment. Supply of retrended tires where the old tire belonging to the supplier of the retrended tire, then it is a supply of good. If you are providing only retrendering service to the tires provided by the recipient, then that is a supply of service. If the tire is also provided by you and the rubber used in retrendering of the tire is also provided by you, so completely is covered under supply of a good, and it is also composite supply. You are doing the retrendering service, but the main activity is selling the tire. Selling the tire. That is covered under supply of goods. Liquidation damages. So liquidation damages are typically levied in such case of breach of contract or failure to perform or non-delivery of the supplies, etc. Liquidation damages are taxable under GST based on the premise that aggrieving party has tolerated or non-performing of other party under the contract. So you have to verify first of all whether that penalty or interest levied on violation of the terms is mentioned in the contract or not. For example, you sell the goods to the customer on credit basis. In the contract itself, you clearly mentioned if you unable to make the payment within the due date, I will collect the interest also. Then that interest is forming part of the sale of goods. Interest is forming part of the amount required to pay by the party because that was already mentioned in the agreement. So that is liable as sale of good only. But coming to the another thing, on the breach of contract, for example, you unable to pay any taxes or duties within the due date, then government lays some penalties on you. That penalty is not said to be a supply, and those are not liable for payment of GST. And coming to the taxability of tenancy rights. Tenancy right. Simply nothing but getting the tenancy rights means you are purchasing the some part of the ownership of the respected building. For example, owner of the building is providing on rental basis to you for 50,000. This is called as renting of a building, supply of service. Along with that, the owner transfer the rights on the building for rupees 2 lakh to Mr. Ravi. What type of rights? Abhi can give that building on subletting basis and can give that building on rental basis to another party. Can give that building on rental basis to another party. And that rights are sold by the owner to Abhi, and those are called as what? Tenancy premium. Pagadi system. We call it as what? Pagadi system. And that tenancy premium is said to be a sub consideration or not. Yes, this is liable for GST. This is liable for GST. And one more thing. For example, actually this party get the contract agreement for 3 years. 3 years. And the owner get the another engagement and owner get the another best offer. And he approached Abhi before 2 years. Actually, he has the contract. He has the right to stay there for 3 years. But before 2 years, he approached Mr. Abhi. So requested him to vacate. Requested him to vacate. And for vacating that one, and owner pay around 1,50,000 to Mr. Abhi. And this is also called as tenancy premium. And this is also liable for payment of what? GST. Yes. So for vacating the tenant before the tenure date, owner pays some amount to the tenant, and that is also called as tenancy premium. That is also called as tenancy premium, and is also liable for payment of GST. And here the transfer of tenancy rights for tenancy premium is considered as a supply. It is taxable under GST. However, the renting of residential property for use as a residence is exempt. So it can be said that the rights are transferred for residential purpose. So if the tenancy premium is relating to the residential building and for residential purpose, that is exempted. That is exempted. It won't attract a GST. So, as we said, if this tenancy premium we levied, if it is meant for commercial purpose, that is taxable for GST. If it is meant for residential purpose, that is exempted, not liable for payment of GST. And GST applicable even in case where stamp duty registration fees are paid. If any, and it means if the contract is getting registration, then you need to pay some stamp duties to the government. Those are also taxable. And the tenancy premium given to the tenant, outgoing tenant, and that means owner requesting the tenant to vacate the building before the tenure date, then owner required to pay some compensation to that party, and that is also called as tenancy premium, but that amount is taxable under the purview of what? GST. Okay, this is the whole concept, whole chapter of the supply. Okay, I hope you understood and enjoy the topic. Okay, don't forget to subscribe my channel, and please share the video to the in your social media, then only he can reach more number of people. Okay, and I will come with a new chapter in the next few days. Okay, thank you. Bye bye.